endurance of pain. Imagine you're sitting quietly in a hospital waiting room, watching an elderly woman in the corner. She's been there for hours, her face etched with lines that speak of decades weathered, yet her eyes hold something unexpected, not defeat, but a kind of quiet strength. Her hands rest calmly in her lap as she waits for news that could change everything. You find yourself wondering, how does someone carry such evident suffering with such grace? This scene reveals one of humanity's most puzzling contradictions. The people who seem to endure the greatest pain often possess the deepest peace, while those who flee from even minor discomfort frequently find themselves trapped in cycles of anxiety and restlessness. How is it that suffering, which we instinctively avoid, might actually be the very thing that teaches us how to truly live? On one hand, pain appears to be purely destructive, something that breaks us down, strips away our illusions, and forces us to confront our limitations. You feel this whenever life delivers an unexpected blow, the loss of someone you love, the failure of dreams you've carefully tended, the slow recognition that your body is more fragile than you once believed. Pain seems to take everything from us. Yet on the other hand, you begin to notice something strange in the aftermath of deep struggle. The person who has faced their own mortality often speaks more gently to others. The parent who has lost a child becomes a source of comfort for other grieving families. The individual who has battled addiction understands compassion in ways that textbooks cannot teach. Pain appears to be not just destructive, but somehow creative, forging qualities of character that cannot emerge through comfort alone. Consider how this paradox plays out in your own small daily struggles. When you avoid a difficult conversation, the anxiety grows larger in your mind. When you finally face it, you often discover it was less terrible than you imagined, and you emerge with new confidence. When you push through physical exhaustion during exercise, you find reserves of strength you didn't know existed. The very thing you resisted becomes the thing that expands your sense of what's possible. This suggests something profound about the relationship between pain and growth. Like a muscle that becomes stronger only when stressed beyond its comfort zone, perhaps the human spirit develops its deepest capacities only when it encounters what it cannot easily handle. You begin to see that the goal isn't to eliminate all discomfort, but to develop a different relationship with it, one that treats pain as information rather than emergency. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. They recognized that while we cannot control what happens to us, we retain absolute authority over how we interpret and respond to events. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his tent during brutal military campaigns, didn't pretend that cold, hunger, and the threat of death were pleasant. Instead, he discovered that these experiences could become teachers if approached with the right mindset. You see this wisdom reflected in his observation that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't philosophical wordplay, but a practical recognition that obstacles often redirect us toward paths we would never have chosen but desperately needed to walk. The job loss that seemed devastating becomes the push toward work that truly fulfills you. The illness that forced you to slow down reveals relationships and simple pleasures you had been rushing past for years. This transformation of perspective doesn't happen overnight, nor does it eliminate the reality of suffering. Pain still hurts, loss still creates real emptiness, and injustice still deserves to be challenged. But you begin to notice a subtle shift in your relationship to these experiences. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start wondering, "What might this teach me?" Or how might this difficulty serve not just my own growth, but my ability to help others? The deepest Stoic insight about pain might be that it connects us to our shared humanity in ways that comfort cannot. When you're struggling, the people who offer the most meaningful support are usually those who have walked through similar darkness. Their words carry weight not because they're clever, but because they're born from experience. Pain, it turns out, is one of our most reliable teachers of empathy. You start to understand why ancient wisdom traditions often spoke of suffering as a gateway rather than a dead end. Not because pain is inherently good, but because facing it with courage and openness can cultivate qualities that remain inaccessible through easier paths. The person who has never faced significant adversity may be intelligent, talented, even successful, but they often lack the depth of compassion that comes only through personal struggle. This doesn't mean you should seek out unnecessary hardship or romanticize suffering. Some pain is simply destructive, some losses leave only emptiness, and it's important to minimize unnecessary harm wherever possible. But when difficulty does arrive, as it inevitably will, you can choose to meet it as a student rather than only as a victim. You can ask not just, how do I escape this? But, what might I learn here? Perhaps the most surprising discovery is that this approach to pain actually reduces its intensity over time. When you stop fighting against difficult emotions and instead allow them to move through you, they often dissipate more quickly than when you resist them. When you accept that struggle is a normal part of human experience rather than evidence that something has gone wrong with your life, you can navigate challenges with less additional suffering piled on top. The elderly woman in the waiting room embodies this understanding. Her peace doesn't come from an absence of pain, but from a deep acceptance of life's full range of experiences. She has learned what the Stoics taught, that our suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our resistance to them. By embracing what cannot be changed and focusing her energy on what remains within her control, her responses, her choices, her attitude, she has found a kind of freedom that exists even in the midst of difficulty. This might be the deepest lesson about enduring pain. It's not about becoming invulnerable or emotionless, but about developing the capacity to remain open and responsive even when life is hard. It's about discovering that you are more resilient than you imagined, more capable of growth than you knew, and more connected to others through shared struggle than you might have recognized. The pain doesn't disappear, but it transforms from an enemy into an unexpected ally in the ongoing project of becoming fully human. As you rest tonight, you might consider your own relationship with difficulty, not to solve anything or change anything immediately, but simply to notice how struggle has shaped you, how challenges have redirected your path, how even your deepest wounds might have become sources of wisdom and compassion. It's not about celebrating suffering, but about recognizing its strange capacity to reveal strengths you didn't know you possessed and connections you might never have discovered through comfort alone.